I also want to say thank you on behalf of the whole Down to Earth crew, because Vivo outfitted us, all running around Australia shooting our season 2. So that was a special thing, and I know I would stop in and talk to everyone about how great their feet were feeling, and everyone was just blown away at the difference of putting their feet into a shoe that had their foot in mind. So on behalf of the crew, I just want to say
Uh,
thank you.
well, like you say, it's an odd thing that people sort of remember what how people often say, "God, what's the magic of these shoes?" There's so, there is no magic at
Right.
all. It's
Yeah.
just you getting your feet back in their natural position again, and it's just extraordinary that so many people wander this earth with their feet in very odd, squished, raised, little foot coffins that don't allow them to do that. It's just, it's not that long ago that everyone on Earth would have been actually wandering this Earth with their feet, even in footwear,
Yeah.
completely natural, completely allowing their foot to do its natural thing. But probably only in the last few hundred years that we've taken a weird left turn, along with many, many other funny
Yeah.
left turns the world's taken recently.
It's, it's the list is quite long, and
It's quite long.
and
We've
with
got
yeah,
I was
go
going to
ahead.
say, we've got a lot of, as we like to say, unfucking the world to do.
Right. Yeah. Well, listen, I think that what are we here for? And there is a, as we call it, that pendulum swings, right? If you get caught on any phase of the pendulum and overreacting, then you become kind of a victim of the matrix of the acute situation. However, stepping back a second and going, okay, you know, certain things just don't make sense. So what's the actual what's a way that we can look at this to better ourselves? And certainly I'm finding that. I don't know if you are, I'm sure you are, that there's coming out of the woodwork, there's more and more great people doing great things, as a result of some of the fuckery that's going on, right?
No, I mean, it feels, darker. The world feels darker than it's ever felt on many, many levels. And but as you say, there's no question a rising resistance, a rebel army that feels growing in number and more bonded together than ever, and
Yeah.
importantly so. Um, and it's obviously super heartening to find more and more people to sort of make you feel stronger and build the resistance basically. And it's not a resistance. It's a the word of the day and age. It's a regeneration.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that Galahad, you've always been outside the box thinking, I think, right? And in one respect, we've allowed ourselves to be duped in so many different ways, right? Um, I just am finishing a book called Fatal Conveniences, where I'm diving into everything from cell phones to personal care items to all of these things that like seemingly make things convenient, but then they have this rub where they actually undercut us. And again, the foot and the shoe is like, how the hell did we get convinced to uh like you say, coffin our foot, into something that is absolutely not natural, and then and somehow be convinced of a lie, and then it just keeps going and going and going. it's just astonishing to me of the human animal that we allow these things. And again, we're using the muse of the foot, but liberating your foot again feels you can't go back anymore, right? You just
Yeah, well,
can't.
I mean, yeah, sorry to interrupt you. The crazy thing about what you say is like that I'm an out of the box thinker, but you know, and like in so many other things, I know that you're helping the world to understand again, but it's quite the opposite of in the context of 20,000 years of humans making footwear. It's quite the opposite of out of the box, right? I'm making shoes like the same way that humans made shoes for 19,800 years of that 20,000 years, right? So that out of the box stuff has been, you know, just this very little brief recent moment in time.
Mm, mm,
And I don't know, there's lots of theories of you know, funny enough, just come back from Namibia, where
mm,
we've got a project going with the Bushmen in the Kalahari, just on the Namibian Botswana border, and you know, so Bushmen still, you know, not completely living as they would have lived 100,000 years ago, but living pretty close to it. And it was I visited this place for the first time about 6 or 7 years ago, and everything was supernatural about the way they lived, apart from they were wandering around in weird Western secondhand shoes. I mean, but literally to the point where they're living, you know, completely in grass huts, and they're hunting, they're foraging, they're living as close to nature as, you know, humans you can imagine. And I said, well, what the hell's going on with the shoes? This is, you know, and they said, yeah, well, because of hunting restrictions, they would have made their original sandals from eland skin, which is a big antelope. But because of the hunting restrictions, they haven't been able to get enough eland skins to make um, their original hunting sandals.
mm.
And so they've kind of, I don't know, by hook or by crook, gotten their hands on these crappy Western plastic shoes from, you know, any, by some extraordinary circumstance. So we've just been working on a project to help them get back those original skins and reintroduce back their cobbling, which some of them still remembered how to do.
Mm.
And it was just about to die out, that cobbling, and it's a um, but obviously it's just very perfect, pure barefoot shoemaking with simple straps that hold the foot completely. So, you know, those are the guys that would have done 8 9 hours running down a kudu across the Kalahari,
Mm.
and they would have invented simple foot coverings to protect themselves from the heat and the camel thorns to enable them to do that. And yeah, so that's all we're just trying to get back to that basic foot covering. You know, so the out of the box stuff, I guess, started with horse riding and stirrups, and then society and status took over on many levels. And
Yeah, and the astonishing thing is like there's very few people in the world that can say that there is craft that's been gifted throughout generations and now being the seventh generation shoemaker. It's like that to me, Galahad, is so interesting. And I can't imagine the genealogy of events that have happened along those lines. But then for you, because I want to unpack the business and all of the amazing things, because you represent something to me. Like I look up to you and the company because you're it doesn't even feel like to me that you're following anybody. It feels like to me, and I want you to describe this, it feels like to me that you're just doing what is the right thing to do. And it seems that other people look at you and go, oh my God, that's so great. Kind of to your point where you're like, well, we're just doing what our feet are supposed to do. And then we're just helping these people out because we became aware of a situation. So why wouldn't we? We're just recycling, revivoing our shoes because why would we want it in the landfill? There's so many examples of what you're doing that inspire me that I wish through magic dust we could get all CEOs and entrepreneurs to adopt that almost common sense approach beyond just this kind of linear profit-centered motive. So I said a lot there, but
Yeah,
I would
no, it's
love.
cool. It's a cool. I mean, honestly, that's a lovely way to put it. And we often say, look, people say, "Oh God, what's the vision of the company?" And wow, the interesting approach you're taking. And there's really no amazing vision or some sort of genius, interesting new way of looking at things. We always just say, Mother Nature is the boss. And we've got this. We're definitely not the first business ever to just try to do right by society and ultimately try to do right by nature. And in fact, you spoke about my family shoemaking, and you're right. My family grew up as sheep farmers in the southwest of England. They were, and we're going back to the early 19th century now, so early 1800s in England. They were sheep farmers, and so they were then also tanning sheep hides, and they made their first shoe in 1825, which was basically a sheepskin slipper called the Brown Peter. And because they were Quakers, they were never allowed to go to university because back in those days, in order to go to university, you had to swear an oath to the high church, basically. And the Quakers were anti the high church, and there's a lot of Quakers obviously that ended up in America. So a lot of Quakers, if they didn't go to America and they stayed in England, they kind of set up shop instead of going to university, and they kind of educated themselves, and they built amazing businesses. And there's lots of great businesses built in the 19th century by Quakers, and actually some of the banks like Barclays and Coots, they're originally Quaker families. Obviously, the chocolate business Cadbury's and Clark's, and in many ways, we talk a lot about social enterprises now these days, but as this new great thing. But those Quaker businesses of the 19th century were the ultimate social enterprises. They existed almost entirely driven by a higher purpose. They were massively involved in all of the big issues of the day, starting with born laws, starting with the anti-slavery movement, going on into apartheid. They were, early environmentalists, like back in the 19th century. The suffragette movement, you name it. They did business, but with the profits, they looked after their communities and they looked after the land. But then they put a lot of the profits into the causes of the day and age, often run by the women, led by the women in the communities, and educated incredibly themselves without any, because they weren't able to participate in the schools of the day and age. So, and interestingly, linked to Vivo, not in just the way they ran their businesses and the way they operated business, but in the late like we're now in the, like, say, 1870s, 1880s. Clark's, who 50 years earlier made their first basically sheepskin slipper, had started making full-on shoes and started to build up factories. And the Quakers got a good reputation for trading because they were very fair and doing things for the right reasons. So they were providing good service to society as cobblers, basically. Mm. But by the time the 1870s, 1880s came along, if you saw a Clark's advertising campaign from 1880 and you read it all out, and it's one of them's titled "Hygienic Boots and Shoes," it almost reads exactly like a Vivobarefoot commercial today.
Wow.
of just wearing natural shaped shoes. You can regain the shape of your natural feet, and you should protect your children's feet from, and you can move naturally and, basically enjoy life rather than being stuck in your Victorian hobnail boots or whatever. But Clark's, like almost every other bloody business in the world, just just took some weird turns in the 20th century. I don't know. It was like about post-war, everyone just started this weird journey of trying to emancipate themselves from nature, and technology took over, and Clark's, like every other shoe business, started introducing all this fancy gizmos to try and make our lives better. And as we sit here today, we just know that a lot of that stuff was didn't work, misguided.
Mhm.
And now we're just going back to not only 10,000 years ago, but even to maybe just 150 years ago. And, there was beautiful businesses making beautiful products, wonderful service to society. Um, so, you know, like you say, we're not really trying to do anything new or like there's never been done before. Just trying to make it real again. Like like so many, and we need thousands and thousands of businesses like this, and thankfully thousands of businesses are coming up like this, and we're excited to be part of that movement.
Yeah, it is true. I mean, I think on a weekly basis, I get aware of something or talk to someone, or they point me in the direction. Um, Molymers created out of sugars spun into thread rather than petroleum, like just extraordinary, mycelium into faux leather. It's like this stuff is
Yeah,
happening. And I think
exactly.
at yeah, and at scale, it all starts to work itself out, right? The price starts to become something where it can be mainstream. And that's what I like about like there's no yeah, I think listen, just personally, I think your shoes are the best. I love them, and the funny thing is I don't like shoes, right? So and I say this all the time,
Yeah,
but if I am gonna if I have to go out in the world, I always have a pair of Vivos under my seat
yeah.
in my car. So when I am out, I gotta I literally feel like I'm in prison if I have to put on any other type of shoe. Like it
Yeah,
just
well, that's what
doesn't.
what we say. We make shoes for people that don't like to wear them,
Yeah, that's perfect. Because
like
it's
yourself.
yeah. It's just because again, when your feet are free and then you feel so much from the ground all the way up, it's kind of like once you've taken whatever the red pill or the blue, I forget which one, whenever you've become aware, you don't want to go back asleep. You don't want your feet to get all crammed and messed up again. So where was it then that, obviously as a kid, you're running around, you're aware of the family doing the foot thing and the creating creating shoes, and then you have your own interesting journey. What happened where you said, I have to do this all differently now? I have to get back to what we all were doing. How did that occur for you?
Well, interestingly, Clark's, as a business, my aunt was discussing this with me the other day, and she said like her theory is that it all went wrong in Clark's when my grandfather was the first generation that was allowed to go to university, and his mind got polluted by the modern world, right? And he came, and his generation basically so we're talking, what are we talking, like 1930s, something like that. I guess he went to university, and he got confused by the modern world, and the Quaker values and everything that was part of it. So I started to wane, and in the end, Clark's as a business, basically, the family lost control by the time the late 80s, early 90s, and that happened when I was at high school.
Mm,
So I was about 15, 16 years old, and the family were basically kicked out of the business. And I witnessed this, and I was conscious enough and aware enough to understand that was going on. But I was already super inspired by the Quaker story, and my forefathers had built this amazing business and a lot of the values that they owned. And I kind of witnessed in I guess the late 80s, early 90s, the waning of those values. And you know what it was like there was this sort of, Wall Street and the new capitalism with this big thing. And I remember these kind of fancy advisors coming around the house and talking to my father, and sort of like shareholder capitalism. And it was all the talk. And they were very slick dudes, right? Like coming and with slick financial packages and stories. And and it all felt wrong, and it was a really tragic time for the family on many many levels. And I witnessed my father be crushed by this whole goings on. And even though he probably had strayed away from the Quaker path, he was then really influenced by all this slick kind of 90s capitalism, Wolf of Wall Street type, where the epitome of it was maybe all that. So I always kind of knew something was wrong with business, and knew something was wrong with the way business was being done in the modern world, and always wanted to get back to running a business for good, shall we say. So cut a long story short, I started making shoes, and my original shoe journey was because I wanted to make shoes with Wu-Tang, because I was like every middle class white guy in the late 90s was into Wu-Tang, and they were into Clarks. I was like, this is my chance to go and hang out with them. We had an amazing meeting where I basically got Wu-Tang in the room with the Clarks management in Boston, who are the most waspy guys you can imagine. One of the most, one of those moments in life let's just say the meeting didn't go well. And so I said, okay, well, we can do this. Let's do Wu shoes. So I tried to make some shoes with them. Let's just say that didn't go well either. But it was an extraordinary experience on many levels. And, we can talk about some of the details of that another time. But that gave me the shoemaking bug. I then started, by hook or by crook, was kind of then in the shoemaking, and I was just into it. Had another brand. And then a childhood friend of mine came to me with the idea of barefoot shoes. Wasn't and it just instinctively made sense. I was lucky to grow up kind of in the British version of California, I guess. I spent a lot of my childhood barefoot, related that to my happiest, freest, healthiest times. And then, but as you start to learn about it, you start to experience it, you start to use it, study the science, study the anatomy. The crazy thing about the shoe industry is very few people in the shoe industry understand foot anatomy, understand biomechanics, understand kinetics. Very few. It's all just random design on the way that we've always done it, kind of thing. But very few actually understand the way the foot works. And what is the truest thing ever said about the shoe industry is that the most advanced piece of technology to ever go into a shoe is the foot. And if you look at the kind of most advanced millions of dollars robotic foots, they're crap. They're so rudimentary and shit compared to the sophistication of the human foot, which is just extraordinary. It's 2 million years of like perfect engineering, and it's just an extraordinary sensory organ that is just left to its own devices, so perfect. Anyway, we learned all of this, and then you get to the point, and I'm sure you experience this point in life. And once you get to a set of truths, and for us, it started with feet, but then it's so much bigger than feet. It's everything that there's just no going back. And then once you've developed that understanding of the world, that understanding of nature, and in our case, obviously, natural movement. And that was the reason we first went to Namibia was to study natural movement and meet the first original natural movers, the Bushmen in the Kalahari Desert. So we just got into it, and then and then and then there's no going back. So here we are today. It feels like day one, just beginning. We're like nowhere, we're just beginning, right? We're nowhere, in terms of actually making shoes that are truly regenerative. We're at 0% of that journey in many ways, right? And then, it starts with feet, but really, it's about taking people, and we want to take our community and our customers on transformative natural health journeys. It starts with feet, but it doesn't end with feet, right? There's a whole ecosystem of journeys we need, and you know more about the pieces of that massive puzzle than most, but it's ultimately pretty simple, but weirdly not normal.
Right. Yeah, it is true. And there is this there is an absolute unlearning of whatever indoctrination. We first get indoctrinated by the people that gave us birth, our parents. They know what they know, they pass on their perceived knowledge, and then we move on from there. We get told through a television what to think. We go to university, all of these things, but it's like, what is the truth? And I always think, like, we do, and you said it, when someone says something and then your innate instinct just flips a switch and you're like, that makes sense, right? And that's, I think, my biggest hope, where I think we share so much of that, is I want to wake up that apathetic space that seems to be void of common sense, of that instinctualness that we all have. And and I just want to highlight again, the foot. I will also, like, when I was in physiology and kinesiology class in college, at least I got some spark of knowledge. But like, yeah, below, where that ankle and the 26 bones and 100 muscles and tendons and ligaments, and then, like you said, I mean, why do you think one of the oldest traditions in the world in terms of healthcare focuses on the feet to help with traditional Chinese medicine and reflexology and all of this stuff, and even Ayurveda, which could argue is even deeper? They all do and acknowledge all of this stuff, and yet, in some sort of weird, planned, unplanned idea, let's not let that piece of the body be in touch with any part of the natural world. And in fact, we're going to numb it out, right? We're going to numb it and crush it. And that's the start of us as an evolutionary being. So I just want to also highlight that for everyone listening. Like, we have to wake up to, and this is a symbol, but a very powerful one in terms of our feet. Wake them up, let them open up again, let them feel the earth again, let them reactivate. And I remember times that I was in the middle of the Amazon, and even though I had some of the five fingers at the time, I still would, like, just take them and throw them in my backpack, and just, like, I want to walk on the earth. And even if there's red ants and bullet ants and everything else, I don't care. I want to feel that again. And so anyway, I just want to highlight that, because it's such an important aspect of kind of the foot and the start of that. But the thing that I also very quickly realized about you and the company is that the mission was very much way beyond what that foot is, because it's about movement, it's about optimum health, it's about doing good, it's about eliminating waste, it's about sustainability, sustainability, before that was even just a catch-all term. And that's really, it's so exciting to see. And I think, it's exciting that, yeah, I too feel the same way, in a certain sense, that we're just now beginning. Um, and we have a lot more to go, but it's kind of like, what else are we going to do? Like, let's just go. And so talk to me about some of the initiatives that you're doing. Obviously your health and lifestyle and B Corp, and talk to me about some of the stuff that you're really reaching for, and certainly the revivoing, and all of those things.
Beautifully said. And I mean, look, I'll start with feet. I mean, because ultimately we are one people standing on one earth, connected by 2 feet, and something we've always known, but been in some ways scared to approach is grounding. And for us, barefoot on the earth is the gold standard.
Mm.
And I also take my shoes off at every opportunity to be barefoot on the earth as much as I can. If you get off a long flight, the best thing you can possibly do is be barefoot on the earth. And we've been scared of grounding, as it were, because perhaps the science has not been quite as solid, and we've got so many kind of arguments to win just on getting people back into barefoot based on such core, simple biomechanics and anatomy and foot function, as it were. There's still such a kind of argument to be won there, as it were, that we've always been scared that the grounding argument and just the being electrically connected to the earth would maybe undermine the basic barefoot argument. But fuck it, we're ready to take that on. So first initiative is that we're now figuring out how to make all our soles conductive, so that,
Wow.
that even wearing the shoes, you're conducted and grounded to the earth, and you don't lose that electrical connectivity. And it was Zach Bush, actually, in many ways, that helped inspire and just kind of break down the science and the solidity of it all, and the amazing electricity that comes from the stratosphere and the universe. And I think there's something like 100,000 lightning strikes every day on the Earth, or something. I think that's even
Right.
hour, or a
Yeah.
lot of electricity is being shared between the Earth and the universe. And the Earth is full of electrical charge. It's the magnetic cores. It's the way so many animals navigate, and humans are designed to obviously are full of electricity as well. And I know you know this very well. And this is also old science. It's coming back to life, as it were. Um, so and Zach described it like, when you're actually standing barefoot on the earth, and you're connected to the electrical field, your whole body becomes like a Faraday cage.
Mm.
And so you're part of that electrical field, and you have a sort of extra level of protection in many ways. And so this, when humans started wearing rubber-soled shoes and literally disconnecting themselves, figuratively, literally, from that electrical field, a lot of health problems started to occur, and loss of protection. So I won't make any big claims, but you can imagine they're big health claims of what happened when humans as a species literally started ungrounding ourselves. So first big initiative, not out yet, coming out soon. I guess second big initiative for us is we're I think in many ways we want to sort of it starts with the feet, and the feet is really important, but um, the overarching goal of the brand is to bring people back to natural health. So we just launched a digital health education platform program. And in many ways, we see ourselves now as a natural health company, a natural health brand, not a footwear brand. And so we want to bring as much education and inspiration out into the world to just bring people on those natural health journeys back to nature. Starts with feet, of course, and most of the initial courses are all around natural movement and how to regain it, and squatting and toga and all the general sort of get your body working again stuff. But it's going to go on from there. We just launched a breathwork course, etc. And
Nice.
this is all knowledge and understanding that you have in spades and way beyond where we're at. And so we're creating fairly basic level stuff, but trying to at least put it all in one place to take people on those journeys.
Mhm.
Third initiative, I would say, is that is very live for us right now. Is like we're trying to make shoes the way humans always made shoes, and I keep talking about ancient humans and indigenous folk and the way they made shoes, and whether it was the Kalahari Bushmen making sandals out of eland skin, or the first peoples in America making bison moccasins, or whether it was the Sami people in the Arctic making reindeer moccasins, or um, Indians making buffalo sandals, or whatever it was, right? They were always made person by person, foot by foot,
Mm.
perfectly fit from local sustainable materials. And I love the sort of framework of Avatar, right? That we will ultimately all this bloody science and technology and our new deep understanding of the way the world works will ultimately take us right back to nature. And in shoemaking's case, it's 3D printing
Mm.
will take us back in a mass level to be able to make shoes person by person, foot by foot. And obviously, 3D
Wow.
printing really lends itself to just simple barefoot shoes, because all the bullshit underfoot technology is really difficult in 3D printing, but actually just making a second skin for your foot is relatively easy. So we're launching next year,
Wow.
person by person, scan to print, a little bit of customization, um, you know, so you get bespoke footwear basically, but just the way humans would have made shoes 10,000 years ago, person by person, foot by foot. And then, yeah, I mean, those are maybe the three. Those are three pretty big things, right? Grounding, health, natural health, and bespoke shoes that just make. Because we studied um, the databases now, and through technology, you get all these amazing things like 16 million foot scans in one database. You can study literally millions of size eights. But when you look at like a million size eights and you study the different shapes, right? The bell curve of the widths, the arch heights, the bridge heights, the all the different cones, that it is such an amazing variety of shapes that
Mm.
that encompass a size 8 of foot. That by our reckoning, only about 40% of people who are size 8 can possibly be wearing fitting shoes. So most of us just have to be walking around in shoes that are deforming, weakening, or undermining our natural foot function, our natural movement. Have just by
Wow.
definition, just by studying all those foot scans. And so actually sort of, the mass manufacturing of footwear will always do humans wrong. And we make 22 billion pairs of shoes a year, most of them, basically all of them, made from in a non-regenerative way. So all of them are fucking up the planet,
Mhm.
and we try to be as sustainable as possible, but we're a long way away from making shoes that we can possibly call truly regenerative or truly circular or truly compostable, should we say. But we're trying, as we've got loads of initiatives, we're trying as hard as we can possibly try. But
Mm.
the truth is, 22 billion pairs of shoes, none of them fit. Most of them actively damage people's health. and I would say, as bad as giving children cigarettes, the shoe industry is, it's a
Mhm.
public health scandal. They then nearly all end up in landfill. So it's
Mhm.
a fucking disaster, right? A lot of nearly all the materials are fossil fuels or heavy metals and leather tanning, yada, yada, yada.
Mhm.
So, it's fucking up the planet, it's fucking up our health. This massive industry with some of the sexiest brands the world's ever known, telling the most beautiful stories, of of our sort of heroes that
Mhm.
we sort of admire and love. But it's a disaster. So,
Yeah.
actually, like that whole system needs to just change, needs to like go away, and we need to start again making footwear that fits our feet, allows us to move naturally, and in the perfect world is if it's made out of plastic, at least it's totally circular, it's genuinely circular, which recycling is not circular, as we know, it's downcycling, or at least made from natural materials that are ultimately compostable. And so that's day one of this. We haven't even launched, we haven't started that yet.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, when you put it all together like that with, I've been looking at the fast fashion industry and I didn't even, I mean, aside from knowing you and getting educated about shoes through Vivo and a few places, the when you peel back the layers at these, you said it, it's really, really bad systems. And all it takes, I say that lightly, is changing the system so that the system is not harming. Here's what I've become increasingly aware of, which is the most common sense thing ever. That is, if it harms you as an individual, inherently, it has to continue to harm all the way down the chain. Period. There's no getting around that. No matter what industry it is, what ingredient it is, what product it is, if it's harming you, it's harming Gaia, it's harming the planet, it's harming the insects, it's harming so this shoe, let's use the shoe. If you're smashing your foot in it, it's harming you, period, right? So now it's deforming you from the start all the way up the chain, and then it's polluting the earth because there's no way that they're recycling any of it because it's already inherently polluting materials that they're using from a false narrative that they said your feet are inherently flawed, so we need to support them. Like what? Like kind of full circle, we're back to the arch, the geometry, the sacredness of how we evolved. What? What do you mean it's wrong, it's flawed, it's everything? Like it makes no sense whatsoever. So I celebrate that with you. And listen, is anything perfect? No. But like Vivo and like what you're doing and the whole team, I've met a bunch of them, you're going for it, right? And this is the first I'm hearing about the is a question I had, the electromagnetic acknowledgement of the grounding side of it, because that's extraordinary. And again, the first I'm hearing it, the individualized 3D printing of your own feet. I mean, do that at scale with sustainable materials. That's extraordinary. And like that kind of thing is the prowess that I see Vivo doing, like the initiatives that you're just flinging yourself out there going, we don't know how maybe yet, but we're committed, you know?
Yeah. We
And that's
talk
what I see
about
you
like
guys
just
doing.
constant, we basically just talk about constant failure. My definition of success is failing, but then waking up the next morning with no lack of enthusiasm. So as long as
Right,
the enthusiasm's there, we're ready to fail the fuck out of it.
right.
And we're
Well,
failing, we
all the
and it's yeah, just failing all the time, because actually trying to operate in these false systems is, you know, by definition, you're just sort of, and obviously building a business, and you know, there's nearly 150 people now in Vivo, and a lot of, you know, the challenge, as we spoke about in the beginning, is like, you know, even just bringing those people on these journeys is in itself an amazing challenge, and building an organization that is um, built on natural principles rather than old mechanistic hierarchies, in itself a massive challenge. And this theory, you know, as you were talking about, you know, our parents, I guess, pass on extra faults just for you. There's a lovely poem about that in English by Alan Larkin. But you know, and it's this theory of you, right? You got to let go of a lot of stuff to then be able to welcome in the new stuff, and it's very difficult, that. And people are kind of built their lives climbing up a wall. You got to climb down the ladder. You got to walk across the hallway and start climbing up another wall. And that journey of the you is a really challenging one for a lot of people. And in many ways, you know, one of my challenges of building an organization is to bring lots of people on that journey with me. And they come from you know, they come from some of these sexy brands that we know about in the footwear industry that are kind of off on the wrong paradigm. And a journey of coming back to a new way of thinking is also, you know, obviously a big part of it. And you know, like you said, the medic, you know, what we're up against is the medic, you know, the very education systems we revere and surround ourselves by. They're getting, you know, and I can really only talk about feet and footwear, but it's just mistaught at source so badly, so that the experts and the surgeons and the doctors and the podiatrists are so misinformed, and the paradigm is so, you know, and then and then it cascades down, right? They then influence the doctors, influence the physios, influence, and create this whole, so yeah, we're operating in a world that needs kind of root and branch recalibration. But we're kind of doomed to failure on many levels all the time, and you're up against it, right? But like we said at the very beginning, you know, the encouraging thing is that you feel the rebel army coming, you know, gaining force and power, and it's exciting to be part of it.
Well, the thing that I see that you guys are doing, and I've met other people in this space, is that when you fail, you're taking notes, right? You're understanding that why the failure happened, and then you're innovating based on that. And you know, going back to all of it, life inherently is projecting the failure. We will absolutely meet pain and failure, and that is the catalyst for change. That's this reality. If anyone resists that, they're going to have some sort of bubblegum life where nothing happens and nothing wrong is going to, that's not what this plane of existence is. So we might as well, as we move, when we fail, when we stub our toe, what led to it, right? What led to it? And just as a company, it's like, okay, well, we failed 150 times trying to create a new material science that's more sustainable. Well, you carefully taking notes so that you can constantly innovate. And then we're, you know, facing the giants, and the giants are these systems that without you, without people like you, other people won't see what is possible. Because as you know, so many people need to see it for them to believe it, right? So there's all of us and your team sitting in the corners in the dark rooms, working their ass off, failing over and over and over again to finally come to the other side and go, hey, I think this is going to work. now you create that bridge of opportunity, because now other people are like, oh, number one, that's a beautiful shoe. Number two, that makes a lot of sense for my foot to be in there rather than this other thing. Oh, okay, I see it. You know what I mean? And that's the, and I'm also curious, like when you bring people over inside the company from the other worlds, the other industry, that those moments when they just go, oh my God, like, wow, like the light bulb goes on. That's got to be extraordinary.
It's no, I mean, like we were saying earlier, the um, people, and it happens a lot, not just people coming into the business, because obviously we kind of
Yeah.
force them to wear the shoes and brainwash the shit out of them, of course. But but it's kind of like what's almost more interesting is friends and family that are around us who don't put up with our bullshit so readily, and I've experienced this quite a few times where people really close to me, sort of like, who are like old friends, let's say 20-year-old friends, and they just kind of don't want to, they're just not ready to have the conversation for whatever reason. And I've been Vivo's been a standalone brand for 10 years. This is our 10th year anniversary, but it had gestated for quite a few years before that as a sub brand of another company. But so I've been going around telling people shoes are bad for you for a little while now, and so close friends and family, some of them only just almost like started wearing them like 3 or 4 years ago, right? Or even more recently. Some of them still, and they're like, "Whoa, what? That's what is it with these? These are really kind of pretty. This is something. Oh, I'm totally. My back's feeling better and everything's working better." I'm like, dude, I've been telling you that for 7 years. You've had the equivalent of about a kind of $1 billion advertising campaign, and so it just, I don't know. It takes a lot. It's extraordinary, the block to the, these are friends of
Mhm.
mine that are in
Mhm.
theory sympathetic to, well, or as apparently deeply unsympathetic to whatever the hell I'm saying.
Yeah.
Um, but then, like you say, once you make the change, and it's just, this is just the most simple natural step you can make, and that's I choose my words carefully. And once you start stepping naturally, you can't go back to unnatural, right? That's and as you know, and you do it right. You walk before you run, and you don't kind of overdo it. Once your foot starts, and the research shows that just by walking around in barefoot shoes for 6 months, your feet get 60% stronger, which is a crazy number, right? That's a number that doesn't almost exist in science. So just by walking around in less shoe, and frankly, it would probably be even more if it was completely barefoot, because our shoes are sort of slightly compromised barefoot, if we're to be brutally honest. But anyway, just by walking around in barefoot shoes. So that's not to say, this massive benefit of barefoot shoes. This is to say that the average person in the West is walking around with feet that are 60% weaker than their just natural base layer, right?
Right.
And it just takes 6 months of just walking around with less shoe on to just regain that natural foot strength and ability. And as you say, if your feet are 60% stronger, then the dramatic impact that has up the kinetic chain, if you're walking 10,000 steps a day, every step is 50% of the shock absorption is designed to be absorbed by the foot. If you're heel striking, it's the arch and the Achilles and heel system that absorbs. Oh, bless you. Good
Thank you.
muting.
Thank you.
And so if you take away that, then you have to absorb all that force up the kinetic chain. You know all this, but anyway, the point is, like, your average Western person, and it's not the average actually. It's like, let's say, because barefoot shoes are probably, I want to say, probably less than 2% of the, no, they're less than 1% of the global shoe market. So 99% of Westerners are walking around with feet that are 60% weaker than they should be. That's like, that's ridiculous. And that's, you can
It's
probably say the same thing for their guts. You can say probably the same thing for their bloody sleep patterns. You probably say the same thing for so many other just basic rudimentary sort of health patterns that we see today. And
you could probably easily make the argument that if your feet are stronger, you're stronger, right? So you're compromised. So why wouldn't you want to increase your strength by 60% and see how you potentially can transform your entire life? Like, that stat is just astonishing. Imagine, like, if someone came up to you and said, do you want to be 60% less strong? No one would be like, no, I have a life to live. I want to be strong. So you're like, okay, well, just take your feet out of those shoes and put them in those shoes. That's
yeah,
it.
and this, I think I think the numbers of people in chronic pain in the West over 50 I can't remember the stat now, but it's like,
Yeah,
let's say 50%, and I think it's more than that,
yeah,
of people in the West are in some kind of chronic pain by the time they get to past 50. And that's just something really wrong with the whole, obviously sedentary lifestyles have a hell of a lot to do with that, but a hell
yeah,
of a lot to do with that is just lack of natural movement, and that builds up over years.
yeah.
And so young people can't quite understand it, because you can get away with anything when you're young, as you know, but obviously the sooner you just start moving naturally, and you know people, you don't need to look like a complete doofus these days to be able to let your feet move naturally. We like to think
Right.
we could do better with women's shoes. We know that. We're working hard on
Good.
making sexier
Good.
women's shoes, and we've got some cool new stuff going out there. But anyway,
I'm
it's a
sure.
long
I'm
story.
sure. I'm sure many people
Failing,
would.
another huge failure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly. Well, fail forward, like you keep doing. I'm inspired by you and the company. My feet love your shoes. I hope everyone listening really hears some of that stuff. This isn't about selling shoes. This is about selling common sense again, right? This is about waking up the hidden tiger in all of us, right? And
There you go.
get back that 60%, man. Come on.
There you go.
Let's
There you
let's
go.
let's go. We need that tribe. We need those warriors. We need new systems. We need a new planet. Like, let's go.
Let's go. Yeah,
So
no time to waste now. We're in the extinction zone now. So we've all got to muck in ASAP,
yeah, it's go time. Well,
tiger
Galahad,
style.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm so stoked to have this conversation with you. We'll be in touch for sure. And I'm just so excited for all of the work and innovation and failures that you're doing so that you can create more and more stuff. We need more people leading the march like you. And I'm just honored to know you and know that you're failing forward.